Okay, so in this video we are going to be creating a simple node project. It's going to be a tax tracker, and I got this idea from this website. So this website is let me go there. The website is here. So this is the project. So I'll post the link in the description so that you can go through it yourself. So basically, I'm just going to add features such as adding, updating, and deleting tags, and marking the tags, listing the tags. I'm also going to be working with the file system. And yeah, into this is a CLI application, meaning that there's not really an interface. It's command line software. So you run it in the command line. So first of all, I recommend that you create a GitHub repo to track your progress. So come here. If you don't have a GitHub account, you can create one. It's very simple. Just search on Google for GitHub. Then through those processes, you create the account. It's not very difficult. So yeah, after creating the account, this is the dashboard. So you can create a repo here. Clicking on this new. Yeah. So yeah, you type in your repo name and you choose whether you want it to be visible or private. Then you can choose to add a readme file and add a git ignore file. So yeah, so that's it for the creation of the repo. So after you create your repo, let me create one. So tax tracker. It's 1, 2. I already have a task tracker itself created, but let me do a demo so that you can see what happens when you create one. So you create one in public here. You can add a get ignore here. Since you are working with Node, choose Node. Then you just click on create repository. Yeah, so then you come here. And then this is where you're going to clone the remote repository. So use SSH to clone, or if you like, and use HTTPS to clone them from Index. So we click on here to copy this URL. Okay, so taking it from where we created the repo online and where we copied the link. So you open VS Code and then you type in you type in git clone. So this is the command to clone the repo. And you pass in the argument, which is what you copied. So you pass in the argument, then you click enter. So we can see cloning into tax, blah blah blah. Okay. Then here you can open the repo that you cloned using the command code task tracker, the folder name. So what you choose as a folder name. So this is what I choose. Enter. So that will open the new window. Okay, that's open a new window. This is the window. So this is what the window is going to look like. What you clone from GitHub. So this is the git ignore file. And it allows you to ignore certain folders that you would not normally want to push to GitHub. So we have this, and okay. So from here, what you do is type in this command npm net -y. This is going to initialize an npm package model in this what do you call it, directory. So this is your package JSON file, and this handles all the packages that I want to use in this project. So from here, you must type in type model, and also I'll explain later. and here you type in which is supposed to be an object. So type in, I have, let me two x.js. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so whenever you make any change, you can just click on the command Control S. You're going to save it. You have to do that every time you make any change before the changes will take effect. Okay, so from here you have to create your folders. Basically creating the architecture of the first most important thing that you have to have is the index.js file, and this is where everything is going to start from. So this is where everything is going to start from. So okay, let me create it here. Index.js file. Yeah. So this is the roots of the application where everything is going to start from. Okay. So from here, let me do this. So Node is basically just JavaScript which runs at the back end. So I'm going to import some things. Even though I haven't put them yet, this is just let me put them first so that it becomes easier. Okay. So let's create our folders first. Let's say keep track of everything. So let's create the folders first. So first I have my folder for helper functions that I'll be using. I have my folder for what else again? Folder for services, folders for ETL, folders, okay. Another folder for services. Another folder for ETLs. Yeah. And I think that's all. Yeah, that is all. So now we have to create basically some couple of functions that we're using throughout the application. Okay, so let me go back to the index.js file, and I'm going to make some changes which are very important. Before that, let me explain this here. So what this means is basically we are making this index.js I've been using HTML index.js file and executable. So whenever you run this command tax_tracker2 in the command line, since you are making a command line software, it's going to run this thing here, what you've typed here. Okay, so let's do that and see what happens. Tax_tracker2. Okay, nothing happens because you have to do one more thing before we do that. So you have to type in npm link. But that's what's going to make this thing take effect. Right now it's not really taking any effect. So this npm link will make this an executable. So before you do this npm link, you have to have this bin here. Okay, so enter. Okay, so now let's try again. That's tracker2. Okay, now you see you don't have any error anymore, even though because when it runs this, there's nothing in it, and it doesn't even know how to run it. So for you to tell the what do you call it, the interpreter how it should run this is index.js. You use a shebang. So the shebang basically is this symbol, the hash symbol, exclamation symbol, slash user slash bean slash not node env space node. This is the shebang. Okay, this is the shebang. So what is it doing? So this will tell your system that whenever this file is executed, you should use the node interpreter to run it. So now you don't have to use this when you're running this this file. You don't have to use node index.js. Just type in tax tracker 2. So let's test it. Okay, so console.log print say hello. So tax tracker 2. So this is the results. It's working correctly. So let's suppose that we take this one out. Let's see if it's going to work still. So you have an error. Syntax error near unexpected CLO, console.log CLO. So this, it doesn't understand, it doesn't know how to run this. It doesn't know which environment to use, whether to use Node, to use Python, to use whatever. So you have to keep it here. Okay. So that's it for now. For the setup. So this is it for the setup. Okay, so let's continue with the implementation. Okay. So now that we set up what we want to set up, let's start with the first let's say the first function of the application, which is adding a tax. So from here, I'm going to pretend like I already have the function already available in my service folder. So I'm going to import it. So I'm calling the function add tax. Okay. So from here, I'm going to use the relative path towards the service folder. So here services. Then let me call it tax service. Okay, so let me create this tax service here. Tax service. Okay, so then this should be visible, right? It should be visible. Okay, so I now have my tax service tax. So let me put in the function that I want. Okay, let me implement this function here. So function add taxes. So what's the parameter for this function? It's basically a description that I will pass to the function. So let me type in here to make sense later. Okay, so what this function is going to do is that we are going to take the tax. Okay, let's say we have a new tax, just any tax at all. Let this one be a placeholder. So for this placeholder, which make this placeholder into the object so that we have key value pairs and each tax will have its own ID. Okay, will have its own ID. So let me use a placeholder ID. Let's say tax ID. This is a placeholder. I'll change this later. ID to have its own description, and this description will be the description that we are passing into this function. But since it's description, you can just let this out. Just leave it like this, description. Okay, works like that. And then we have the status of the tax. So whenever you add a new tax, it's going to be in the default status of to do. Okay. Then we also have the date that the task was created at tax. Okay, created at. So this will get the current date. So let me do this. Let me assume that I have the function already available like this. I'm going to create this function later, so don't worry. Get current timestamp. Okay. And then the update it at. Because when you're running update of the tax, okay, timestamp. Okay. So now you have this. This is a new tax that you add. Okay, so let me talk about it. Whenever you add a new tax, since you're working with the file system, this new tax will be added onto the file on your system. You're not using database yet, so this new tax will be added onto the file, and then okay, but that's it. So okay, so that is cool. So we also have to have some functions available to work with this tax we have here. Okay, so we have to have this function available, which is the load tax. Let me put it here. Counts tax. Load tax. Okay. So after the idea is that after you have this tax, this new tax here, now this brings out an array, so we can just push this new tax into this array, and then we have another function called save tax. Okay, so this save tax here will take this updated array, then you're going to save it onto your system. Okay, so to save to your system, and after that you have to do this. Once we done, let's say done. Now we are done. Okay, yeah, so that is that. So for this to work, let me first export. Okay, I think there is an error somewhere. Oh, sorry, this is an object. You can't have. Let's see. This is supposed to be comma. Okay, so let me export this out. Okay, so for this to work, we have to implement this load tax here, and also this save tax. So let's implement those ones. Function load tax. Okay, so this one takes as a parameter. Let me do this. So in the hopes of making our program very modular, we're going to have this load task and this save task. The functions that will work with the file system, we're going to have them in the utils folder. I'm going to dedicate their own folder for them. So let me create this file utils.js. Okay. It's files utils.js. Okay, so in this file, what do you have? So we have the aim of this file is to export the load file, the load task, and then the save task. So now we have to do what? Create the load task and the save task here. Okay. Okay, so let's create them. Function load task, and this one takes no parameter. So for this to work, since this will be asynchronous and there could be error, so in order to handle the errors that we have to use a try catch block. Okay, so try catch error. So what's error? Let me error. Loading. It's like this thing. It's too much stuff. Okay, so I've observed that typing it and then explaining it is going to waste too much time. So in order to make this quick and fast for you, you're just going to paste the code of this function in it and then I'll explain this later. Okay, so so what is this doing? Okay, so let me also paste this here so that I can have a clearer idea. So we are seeing try, we are seeing catch, we are seeing this. So what this try catch is going to do is that it's going to try to execute the code in this block. The code here in this block. This block here. We're going to try to execute this code in this block. So here it's going to check if the file actually exists first. So you need to check if the file exists first. Then if it's true that it doesn't exist, since because of this exclamation, it's going to check if the file exists or not. So if it exists, that will turn true, and this exclamation will vect it to false. So this is not going to run. But if it doesn't exist, this exclamation will vert to true, then you're going to run there. So if the file doesn't exist, we're going to create a file here, okay, at that same file path, and I'm going to pass it an empty array. Okay, nice. So if the file actually exists, then this is will not be anything here. If it exists, I'm going to read the contents of that file there using the read file sync. Okay, so this is a file from the FS model, the file system module. This one comes built into Node, so you don't have to do anything to install it. Okay, so we're going to read the file here to this, and I'm going to have this data here. Okay, then after you have the data, you're going to check if the data is an empty file. So what is an empty file? So if you check it's an empty file, okay, return an empty array. If it is not empty, then it contains something. tags in this case, we're going to pass the data. So this year, to return a JSON file, you have to pass it into JavaScript object. Okay. And if there's any error along the lines, we'll just catch that error. We're not going to crash our program. We're going to catch that error, and then I'm going to console the log the error. Okay. So that's it. And then also, since you are using this functions from the file model, let's have it here. Let's have it here. Okay. Then let's export. Tags. Okay. So now for the save tags. Function save tags. Save tags. So as I did before, I'm going to paste the code here and explain it. Okay. So for this we have here. So this is going to take the array of the tags, then it's going to write that the contents of the array into the file. I'm going to replace everything using this function, the write file sync function. And if there's any error, catch that error. So I have this write file function here imported from fs, the read file also here, the exist also here. Okay, so that's okay. That's okay. So let me export this one to also. Export this one to also. Okay. So exported. Then let me why is this function here? Okay, so there's an error. This is supposed to be here. Attack service radar. I don't know why it was the other side of the thing. Okay. So now let's implement these functions since you're also using them. So let's implement them. Where should I implement them? In the utils. Yeah. Let's implement them in the utils. So this is just one function. So time utils. Expand this later. So this function is just going to get a current date. Going to get a current date for us. Okay. So you have that, and we have the index dots. Okay. Okay. We have this. So as you can see, we are making the functions modular. So every function in its own place. Okay, so from here, what this should do from here is you're going to grab the command line arguments. Spell arguments correctly. Okay, so let me paste this code here so that I can just see it. Okay, so this function comes with node process.arg. So this basically returns an array of the arguments that are going to pass to the function. So let's do a demonstration. Let me cut this one out first. Okay, let me just do this so I can see it. This. Arguments. Process. Okay. So. Okay. So why is So I think I can use this name. So let me use this name instead. So tax tracker. Tax tracker. Let's pass in an argument. So let me pass in arguments. Arguments. My imagination is very so enter. We have an error. What is this error? Model blah blah blah. That's not. Oh, it doesn't. Let's see. So let's go to the add tags. Let's see what that service. Add tags. Not important. Okay. So we see these are the arguments. So you see it's only the last part. The first two are not what I actually want. It is the from the third going. So that's what this code here is doing. So this is going to take the array. It's going to ignore the first two using this comma operator. We're going to ignore the first two. Then you're going to put the third content or the third data, the third portion data into this command. Then finally, you're going to put the rest of the data after the third into this array. This one is only going to be an array also. This is basically using the spread operator and then the destructuring JavaScript syntax. Okay. So what I'm doing is that if I type in this task tracker, I'll add what I want to do. Do I want to add a tax, delete a tax, or list all the tax? So if I say let's say add, then I pass another argument. Let's say I'm adding the tax to do let's say wash the dishes. Okay. So I'll take this add. This is my command. What am I doing? I'm going to take the rest as the task itself. Okay. So this is the idea. So I'm going to use the switch statement to implement this. Okay, so switch. Okay, so let me use command. Okay, so case whereby I pass in add. What do I want to do if I pass in add? If I pass in add, I want to first of all let me get the description. What am I adding? Description. I'm adding. So this is an array, as I already mentioned. Okay, so let's do this first so that you get a clear idea. Also the log description. Okay, break. Okay, so let me do after this now defaults. Also the log. It's okay. So if I pass in add here, okay, so in this case this command is add, right? So for the case add, this should run. So let's see. Okay, if you are not seeing the description here, it has grabbed the rest of the contents of this array, leaving the first, the second, and the third. Okay, so that's what you have to do here. So since this is in the form of an array, I want to join them into a string. So I'm going to join them into a string using the join command. Join them. Okay, so let's run again and see what I get. Wash the dishes. Nice. Okay, so we have this. So what I do with this description, I call on the add tags that I created, then pass the description. See, pass the description. Nice. So let's go there, see. Let's just run and see if we get an error. Okay, so we are getting the errors here. Load tags is not defined. Okay, load tags is not defined. So I have to now import them here. Okay, import load tags. So this is very cool in Node or in JavaScript. Oh, sorry, in VS Code rather. It's going to help you to import your node tag. So be careful. You have to add in the JS here, or it's not going to work. So import the save tags also. So I think they are all in the same file. So I can just use from here save tags, and then I think that was all. Yeah, I think that was all. So now let's get it. Okay, so we still have an error. Okay, so I've not imported this functions here, so let me import them also. Let's get characters. Okay, so let's run it again and see if we get any more error. Okay, cannot read properties of undefined. Cannot read. Let's see. Where is the error? Okay, so yeah, error reading task. There's file path is not defined. Yes. Okay, so from here in the service here or the helpers. Okay, sorry, rather. I'm using here. Where is it? Here, see file path. But I haven't defined it here. Okay. So this takes the file path and this takes the JSON file. So I have to define this here. This file path. So just a string that specifies the file path where I want to write the file to. The absolute path or the relative path, depending on what you want. So we are using the absolute path. So I have to do some changes here to get a file path where I want to write the file to. So let me do this. Let me import the path model. Nice. So let me what is this? And then so I want to get a directory for this, for where I want the file to be. So since we are using ES6 models, I can't just use the directory, their name to get the directory name instantly. I have to use some different methods. So yeah, I'm going to type create get my own dir name. So using the path model dir name. Okay, so file URL to path. Okay, import meta URL. So what is this? What does this even mean? So this here import meta URL is going to basically return the file URL, but the format is not in the path format. It's like this. Okay, so this will change the file URL to path definitions. The syntax of the URL needs to change to the path format. Then this path dir name need to get the directory name, the folder name of this file. The file tells where we are right now. Okay, nice. So after you get that, then to get the file path, comes file path. Let's join. So this part of join takes into strings. Basically used to join path together. Okay, join strings to form path, but it takes in string. So let me do something here to get okay. So let's do this first. So this is where I want to save my path or the file. Okay, tags.json. Okay. Okay. So okay, so let's see if it's working. Let's see what happens right now. Okay. So if you noticed, a file was just created because we didn't have that file before. Okay. We didn't have that file before. Then the task was also created. So now we have the task ID. So I'll be changing this to a proper ID. Then we also have the description that I pass, the status. This is default to do. We have the created at and then the updated at. Okay, nice. So let's change this ID. This ID. ID. So what should replace the ID? So this, I think this should also be its own method to make it more simpler. Okay. So I want to do something here that should pay attention. Okay, so let's create a variable here. So const ID. Yeah, I'm going to take this tax here, and I'm going to check if the length, if the tax even has anything. Okay, let's check the length. So if the length is true, it is the ternary operator. So if the length is true, or if it resolves to true, do this. Take the length here, subtract 1, ID here, find the ID, then add 1. If there is nothing here, if the length is 0 or resolves to false, return 1. So what this is basically doing is that we are going to load the tags here. If a tag is an empty array, this dot length here is 0, which resolves to false. So if this is false, this here will be returned 1. 1 will be returned if this is false. If this is false, 1 will be returned here. This 1 will be returned. Oh, this 1 will be returned. If it is true, if this is true, then this will be returned rather. So this, if this is true, means that let's say it contains just one item. What does this mean? So the task was 1 minus 1, which is 0. So the array content as index 0 is the first item. Okay, means that there's only one item in it, and then you're going to add 1 to the ID of the first item, which is 2. Okay, so like the idea is that let's do it. Okay, let me run this. This is what happens. Let's go here. Oh, did I save it? I think there's an error somewhere. Interesting. Let's see. This should be interesting. Let's do this instead and see what happens. This is so interesting. Okay, why is this happening? Is it because of the file type? Yeah, I think because of the file type. Let me fix this error. Okay, so the problem was mainly because this is basically a type of string. This here is of type string. So when it adds the one, since it's a string, it's concatenating the one with the rest of the content. So let me do this. Let me delete everything here. Okay, now let's see what happens. Okay, so now the type is a number. As you can see, it's a number. So now when I add another thing here, let me add another tax. By so food. So now it's properly working. Okay. So that's that. So now we can now add tax. So what else do we need to do? We can add tax. Now we need to delete or update tax. So which one should we tackle first? So let's tackle the update tax. Okay. So case update. Okay. So yeah, we need the ID of what we want to update. Okay. So to do that, let me grab. So this is the syntax of the update method. So we want to write tax tracker to update. Okay. Then we want to pass in the ID you want to update, then the information you want to update. Blah 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 blah. Okay. So okay. So yeah, let's grab the ID. So update ID. Update ID. You have to make sure that the ID that I'm passing here is a number. Okay, it's type number. Okay, so passing the number, so the args. The first thing passing the args is the ID. Okay. Okay, so now let's the new description that I'm also passing the description. Okay, so from the index 1 to the end, that contains my new description. So I'm going to slice the array from the first index number 1, from index number 1 to the end. Okay, so slice, passing the start. So index number 1, I'm not going to pass in the end. So by default, you're going to do from start to end if I don't pass in the end index. So this will return an array. Then I'm going to join the array, okay, to one string. Okay, I'm going to pass this new description. I'm going to pass this new description and the ID to this function which I am yet to create. Okay, now let's create this function as the same way we created this in the add tax. So it's also supposed to be here update tax. Okay, so let's go here and function update tax. Okay, update tags. So passing the ID and the description based on parameters. Okay, let me paste in the full function here and explain what's going on later. Okay, so okay, so what's going to happen? So first I'm going to load the tags that I have, the current tags. Then I'm going to grab the tags that I'm supposed to update. How do I do that? How do I do that? So since the IDs are all starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, I can just reduce the ID by 1 and I have my tags based on the ID that I pass in currently. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is just, oh, this is because I'm using an array, then I'm able to do this. If I was using a different data structure, I think I can use a different method, but this is very simple. So we'll do this. So after I grab the tags to update, so I change the description, okay, and I change the updated at, okay, to get a current timestamp, okay. Then I save this new tag. So this is changing this tags here. It's changing it. So after I save it, we place everything in the file, the tag stays on file with this new tags here, which is an array. Okay, so let me export it out. Okay, so now let me update the tags. So change update, sorry, update the first tags. Okay, let me change the description to eat. Don't forget to eat your meals. Okay, so means run into an error. Okay, so this was going. Okay, so make sure that when we are passing in the arguments, we pass in a string. So this is going to reduce the errors that you encounter. Okay, so passing a string rather. So as I was trying to do, let's update the second one. Don't forget to upload this video. Okay, so it's now working. So let's check what you have here. Okay, so as you can see, it's working. Then the dates also changed. So at first it was, the time was this, I don't know how I'm supposed to read this. The time was this, then the time changed to this. The update time changed. Okay, so that was that. So now let's work on the delete. So as you've done, we create my delete function here. Delete tags, passing ID as arguments. Okay, so let me export delete tags here. Okay, so let me come here and then the new case is delete. Okay, so now the same thing here as very similar to the updates. Okay, very similar. Passing the ID I want to delete. Then no need to pass in a description. And I call my delete function, delete tags, delete ID. Okay, so now to implement the delete, the delete function. Okay, because this you're not expecting an output. Okay, so let's go here. Delete. Okay, so I'm going to paste the code here, then explain what's going on. It's basically the same thing as you've always been doing. So this will load the tags here, then I decided to use the tags.filter. So I'm going to look for the ID, the tags which has this ID. I could have used this same method for the updates one too, but it's not really changing anything. So we want to filter the tags. I want to return only the tags with. Okay, so what does filter do? Filter calls the it calls the callback function, this arrow function, on every tax, and if the callback returns true, that tax is added into the filtered array, and that array is returned here to this tax. Okay, so whenever we call it the callback on one tax here, we're going to check whether the ID here of the tax is not equal to the ID that I'm going to pass. So if the tax ID is not equal to the ID that I'm going to pass, then it will not be added. Then that means that that tax has been deleted, right? Think about it. I have like 10 items, and I'm going to look through all of them. Then I'm going to check each of the items have a unique attribute. I want to delete one item. I'm going to look through all of them. So whenever I check item 1, if that unique property, let's say the ID, is not equal to the ID that I want to delete, I'm going to keep it, right? If I check and it's not equal, I'm going to keep it. If it is equal, discard it. So that's what's going on here. If this tax here, ID, this unique attribute here, is not equal to the ID that I'm going to pass, it's not equal, I'm going to keep it. And by saying I'm going to keep it, this thing here will return true. If it is not equal, to return true, then this tax will be saved into this tax here. This new tax here. Okay, so that's how the filter is going to work. So in effect, it's basically deleting by selection. So it deletes what it doesn't select. So that's how it works. So the reason why I made these functions, made the separation into modules, you see, I'm calling this function again and again. I'm calling the save task again, calling the new task again. So if I didn't make this into a function, it means I have to copy and paste this code here, this new task code implementation here, paste it here again and again and again. So that's the benefit of functional programming. So we have these functions here. That's basically working here, making everything simple and modular. Okay, so after I have this new task, if it does not contain the task that I want to delete, I'm going to save it here. Okay, so that's the simple implementation. So now let's run it and see if it's working. So delete. So I don't need to pass in a description since I'm just deleting. Okay, let's call the command delete. Okay, so I'm deleting the second item, the ID of 2. Okay, so delete successful. So I think this I'm supposed to pass in the break here so that it stops. By nature of the switch command, that's how it works. The switch statement, sorry. So break here. So after it runs this code here, it doesn't continue. It breaks out. Okay, so that's for delete. So let's go to the last one, which is the list. This is going to be a long video. The list. Okay, so for the list, let me see. Okay, no, before the list, let's go to mark. So this is going to mark a task whether it is done or in progress. Okay, so in order to do that, you have to pass in the ID, because if you don't pass in the ID, how will you know a task that you want to mark? It's the same as the update and then the delete. Okay, so I'll pass in the ID that I want. to know the tags that I want to pass in. What am I saying? So I'll pass in the ID for the system to know that yes, I want to update this tags to, let's say, done or in progress. Okay. So since I'm passing the ID, I have to grab it, right? So mark ID. I want a number. I want a string again. Or it doesn't really matter. I don't know. You can try it out yourself and see if it really matters. Then sorry, let me plus. Okay. So I'll grab the ID, then the status. Is it done? Is it in progress? Okay. The arcs. To slice again. Slice from the. Is this also from the one? Yeah. With the first, the index number 1. Slice from that. So leave the first argument out. Okay. Then yeah, join. Since you are passing just one item, okay, it's still going to be an array. So we need a string. So we want to join. Yeah, so you get a string. Okay. So now you're calling the mark tags. I've not created it yet. Fine. Passing the mark ID and the status. Okay. Now let me import mark tags here. Here. I'll create its mark tags, passing the ID, status. Okay. So the same thing here. You need to load the tags. Well, this is going to take a while. Let me just copy and paste it here. And I'm going to explain what's going on. Okay. So let me export. Okay. So now I have always the same thing. So you are loading the tags here that I have on my file, tags.json. Then I'm going to find the tags to mark. I'm going to change the status of that tags. I'm going to change the update at. I'm going to save the tags. This is basically synonymous to which is it? To update tags. Basically, so yeah, this is basically the same, almost the same as updating the tags. But that's why I'm updating it with a different function. Okay. I wanted to separate the functions. Let's say now I want. So this is updating only the description. This is updating the status. So if you like, you can try this as assignment and combine the update tags and then the mark tags. So this is all this update, okay? So let's see if it is working. Let's see. So let me break here. So it doesn't continue. So passing mark passing the mark. So let me see, passing the mark tags 1 as done. Let's see this error. Okay, it's working. Let's see, task 1 is now done. Oh, okay. I think there's a bug. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, okay, it is working perfectly. So let's try the second one. The 2. Yeah, it's working. Okay. working nice. So for the last one, if you want to list all the tasks that we have here, let's command. Okay, so for the list task, that one is you're not going to pass in any. The argument you're going to pass in is basically if you want to pass in a filter. Let's say I want to list the tasks that are done in progress, or I want to list all the tasks. Doesn't matter whether they are done or in progress or to do. Okay, so let me grab the filter that I'm going to pass. So no ID for this one. Okay, and no ID for this one. Okay, so call the list method with the filter argument. Okay, then break. Okay, so yeah, let's import it and then let's implement it. Okay, so filter. Okay, so now I have the function already here. I'm going to just do the kung fu technique in programming. So yeah, I'm using the filter method of the array. So we're going to call this callback function on every task. I'm going to check if the test status. Oh, this is okay. I think I have to do this so that we have filter is true. Else so what am I doing exactly? So as you can see for this one here, I can choose to pass in the filter argument. I can choose to pass in the filter argument here, whether I want to filter the task based on done, in progress, or to do, or I can just pass in no argument. So if I don't pass an argument, this is going to return false. So you're going to run this, just consider the task. You can implement some what do you call it, some nice interface later. But if there is a filter, I'm going to call the filter method on the task. Then I'm going to filter the task based on this filter. I'm going to check if the task status is equal to the filter. If it is true, then return that task. If it is false, then leave that task out. Okay, so let's see. So right now for my task, I think I have one done, one in progress. So let's see if this is working. So let's first no argument. So now it brings out everything. You see, brings out everything. Okay, so now let's see. Let's pass in to do. Let's make it to a string to avoid any error. Okay, so just to do. Okay, so in progress. Okay, see it is working. In progress, only return in progress. Okay, so now done. Oh, there's no done. Okay, nice. So as you can see, this is just the basic implementation. There is not really much on the error handling. So for the error handling, that one I'll leave that one later. Okay, so thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you've learned something.